I wanted to read a tweet that you put out a couple of hours ago. You said, for years, those questioning the motives and disastrous consequences of the Iraq war were labeled terrorist sympathizers by America's right wing. Now Republicans and propagandists are converging on the doctrine that Russia's dictator who attacked US democracy in 2016 is their hero. It's just what Pompeo was saying. There's a swath of Americans. We hear Fucker Carlson every night praise Russia. I said it. That's his name to me. I don't know if his name is different. Let me know. And so many Americans are aligned with this notion. And I would say people who identify as being white Americans, those people that stormed the Capitol, they don't see Putin as a threat to this democracy or anything.
They see you, you, Karen, you, Tonya, myself as a threat, fellow American citizens. They see us as a threat. It is astonishing. It's really, I'm sorry to jump at this. It's astonishing. It's a sad day, but we need to consider the reality for what it is. There's no illusion and no anymore magnificent delusion about who these people are. They're endorsing a fascist dictator who came to power 20 years ago, Vladimir Putin. And one of the first actions when he was the head of the KGB, which is the GUR, which is the secret services. And they bombed an apartment building to instill fear in the people and start all kind of wars against Chechnya and against all kind of neighboring countries. His biggest dream to revive the Soviet empire. He's willing to kill journalists, to poison his opponents and activists, to invade country, to dismember territories in order to restore, to keep his ego together. He's leading a mafia state where there is so much corruption. There's an oligarchy. If you speak up, you die by poison. If he will buy you or he will intimidate you. These are the two tactics. And America's right is embracing fascism, is embracing Putinism, which stand up for ethno-nationalism, racism, misogyny, but above all, true fascism, who wants to occupy and use power as a legitimate political mean to regain and stay in power. And this is a frightening moment. This is a war on democracy that Putin is waging against Ukraine, but he has allies. We have the right, not even the far right in America, Reagan party, George W. party, the party that wanted to export democracy 20 years ago, is today telling us we want Putinism in the United States of America because their war is basically to install Trump as a dictator and basically crush every minority voice in this country. And we need to wake up. We're in the middle of this war. And in wars, you cannot be neutral. This is the time to decide. If you decide, like, I don't want to, back Putin or back Trump or back Carlson, I want to stay neutral. In this war, there's no neutrality. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, said the most beautiful sentence 2 days ago, where he said, in the 21st century, there's no war that you cannot say to people, this is your war. This is not Ukraine's war. This is an international global war on democracy. And you can be with those people, Putin and Trump, etc., or with the movement for justice, racial equality, human rights, and the movement for rule-based international orders. And there's no in between.
I am, as I'm listening to you, I asked this question of David Pepper: have we ever had democracy? I'm watching the hypocrisy of this country kind of come to roost. Everything that it was born in, the roots of enslavement, of torture, brutality, genocide, now coming to fruition. People are upset. They want to subvert. They want to suppress any telling of that tale. But it's a global story, right? It's a global story that was born in Portugal and then spread throughout Europe, and then, the snatching of resources and bodies, and then Brazil, and then, like it just spread, and now we're in the throes of it, and right? And capitalism is part of it, right? It's wrapped up in it. I don't think you can separate the two, but we're not having these conversations any place where things can be done about it, right? So I feel almost like those of us who are fighting for this, we're fighting a thing that's kind of lost because not enough of us are awake to do something. People are still talking about not voting.
And that's where you come in, Karen. What you're doing, what Tonya is doing, what I do, is to build awareness, to create a movement, and to make people understand what is at stake in this moment. And I remember the Newsweek cover and Time magazine cover after 9/11, trying to question the motivations of what went wrong with the Muslim world that their Z jihadists came out of that world. What went wrong? Why they hate us? You remember that? Today, the question is why Trump movement hate America? Why they hate so much Black and Muslims and Jews and Latinos and women and anybody and liberals and anybody that have a different opinion, because in their worldview, what make them a superior race, because it's the continuation of the same war, the war that never ended, for a caste system, for a superior racial group, an ethno-national system where there's a superior and inferior. There's people who are dominated and live in bondage, and people who actually exploit the system to regain power. This is a camp. This is a camp that Putin invested in. It is not a coincidence that Trump came in defense of Putin. In the same day, Pompeo, his Secretary of State, in the same day, the far-right propaganda movement led by Tucker Carlson. And you know what happened today? That kind of validation Putin is using today in his state propaganda media over and over again to say to the Russian people in this war of propaganda. He's telling the Russian people, you see, I won. I won because I managed to co-opt the former president of the United States, former Secretary of State, chief propagandist for the far-right movement. He is repeating these things to the Russian people to tell them, you see, we are strong because we managed to buy these others, use them as useful idiots to validate, legitimize our basically fascist takeover, tyrannical rule against Ukraine, against Chechnya, against Europe, against anybody that stand up to us. And sadly, the war is already home. And we need to understand that he used these methods, and we never talk enough about the corruption, how much Russian money has been pumped into the system to buy off people like Trump, who are willing to sell America's democracy, not only to Putin, to any dictator, to the Saudi dictator who chopped up journalists, to the Emirati dictators, and they continue to pay him money because they want to own him. They already, I believe, in part own him. And that's why you're seeing the world divided in two worlds, exactly like you said. The world that stand up for, never mind, go and commit genocide and butcher people, pay me, and keep me at your, bankroll me. And the other world like us who are fighting to save what is left of the international order that still truly believe in democracy, in dignity, in social justice, still believe that every man and woman is created equal. This is the battle of our time, and we cannot shy away from it. And we need to continue to speak about it, even when our neighbors and friends and family members are still dormant to the threat, to the existential threat to our lives.
Rula Jubreal is here. She's about to travel. On your page, you also have a story of a mobile crematorium that are following the Russian troops, and that stunned me. And as you're talking, I'm like, these people who wave the American flag, who put the American flag out Memorial Day, July 4th, who keep an American flag in front of their homes all over this country, are they Americans or are they wedded to whiteness globally? Does that flag represent whiteness or does it represent America?
Karen, remember on January 6th, that American flag was used to kill and lynch lawmakers, policemen, after Trump campaigned on the idea that we back the blue, we back the police. Guess what? As soon as he unleashed his MAGA terrorists, they used that same flag that they pretend that they respect and honor. They used it to kill American citizens. In the name of what? In the name of wanting to install a dictator in the United States. They really waged a war on democracy, and they never ended that war. What really shocks me, that I know why they want to suppress history. In 2016, Putin had a favorite candidate in the game. That was Donald Trump. He was his puppet. He knew Trump was obsessed with money, and he knew he could buy him, somehow could buy him. We don't know if there's compromise on Trump or not, but we knew that through money, he couldn't get to him. And guess what? Every foreign policy decision benefits somehow Putin. Look at Syria. Look what he did to Syria. Then he waged war on American democracy. In the eyes of a dictator, this is the biggest victory, because, you know, Putin can go to his people and laugh and say, look how these Americans are treating each other. I'm a strong man. I keep you safe. You don't have these terrorists storming, you know, the Kremlin, or storming the Duma, or storming the parliament. He can point to American democracy, the destabilization, radicalization as weakness. But who brought that in is his favorite candidate, his favorite man, Donald Trump. Fast forward, today, we're seeing the MAGA party, the party of Lincoln, the party of Reagan, standing up and saying, well, you know what? We side with this man over our own president, because we rather dictatorship than democracy. So it can't be clearer than this. And our action should, and I hope that the action of Congress, the Senate, whatever Republicans that still believe in democracy, I believe we need to unite with all the forces, and not be, you know, not to do the puritanical test, the purity test, like you did this in the past. I don't care anymore. We need to save democracy. And we need to really try to galvanize our coalition to reach a point that the war that Putin is waging in Ukraine and Trump is waging here, we need to make sure that they never win. And they never win because we create a larger coalition that can defeat them at every corner, in the courts, at the polls.
Agreed,
everywhere,
Rula.
Everywhere, because
Yes.
now it is an existential threat. And I really, what my fear is that what we see on January 6th is going to be only the first shot in a long war. I don't know if we will see the end of this war in our lifetime, but we're fighting so our children can have a chance.
So Rula, you are fighting hard. You are all over the globe fighting for democracy and freedom. Let's take it back home to Palestine. I was in Palestine in '95. It was like South Africa for me. It is an apartheid state. What can we do? I mean, I think the world sort of, you know, Black Lives Matter has stood up for Palestine, but what can we do for Palestine? Because they are genociding Palestine as we speak. What can we do?
So you know what, this is one of the issues that I've been talking about, especially to Democrats in the United States. I think their foreign policy sometimes, and the hypocrisy. I mean, you know, many people who are denouncing Putin's seizing of territories, occupying invasion, they would not say a word about MBS, for example, the Saudi, you know, bombing Yemen, or the Palestinian being oppressed and brutalized. And it pains me. It truly pains me. But in this larger moment of war, we need to understand that I am not sure, and that the battle is only a regional or local. It's now a global battle on every front. And I think we need to unite.
But what about when we talk about we've got to fight locally? So don't.
No, what I mean is we need to understand that we need to make these Democrats who still sponsor and bankroll Israel and Israel apartheid. We need to tell them, listen, we need to have an awakening within our group and convince them that if you believe in universal human rights, you cannot think that Ukrainians deserve freedom and democracy while Palestinians deserve to be slaves in their own land. You know, one of the things that, because the other side is united. Tonya, when this morning the parliament in the UK was deciding sanctions, they were deciding on the name of one man. He's a Putin bagman. His name is Roman Abramovich. Roman Abramovich, for many years, laundered money in the UK, in the United States, but especially in the UK. He is also funding with hundreds of millions of dollars the settler movement that is ethnically cleansing Palestinians. So you see, the other side is very united, whether Trump, Putin, MBS, Abramovich. They're using all these guys to enact their white supremacist, ethno-nationalist, racist, segregationist, apartheid agenda. Palestine is one chapter, but there's so many chapters. So our side, you need to be united, and we cannot be united on Ukraine and divided on Palestine. Because even Israelis and human rights organizations inside Israel, B'Tselem, Peace Now, many others came out last year saying this is an apartheid that is killing everything in this country, that giving this country to the radicals. You know, you're talking when you were in Israel in 1995, it was 1 year before the fascist movement and the radical movement, the extremists killed Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister who made peace, the only prime minister who tried to have a different dialogue, a different dynamic with the Palestinians. So they've been waging this war for a long time. This war is made of opportunists, propagandists, fanatics, evangelicals, people like, you know, xenophobes and anti-Semites. But all of these people are united and they're willing to help, aid and abet each other. Our side still divided on the issue of Palestine, as if all life matters except Palestinians or African Americans. It pains me, and we need them to understand. I mean, Nancy Pelosi and the delegation went to the West Bank and Gaza. I'm happy they went, and apologies, they went to Jerusalem, they went to Tel Aviv, they went around the country, they went to Ramallah, I believe, they didn't go to Gaza. But I mean, yes, they know what's happening, they talk to people, and then what? What kind of action are you willing to do to hold human rights abusers accountable? And the only action that we have somehow on Israel is to try to withhold military aid. They receive $4 billion a year. I mean, we are subsidizing apartheid in the 21st century, where children in the United States, I believe a huge percentage of babies live under poverty line. I mean, in what world you can claim to defend democracy when you're subsidizing also this element that is an apartheid state in the 21st century? Zelensky wasn't speaking about Ukraine, saying in this war, you know, this is your war and not my war in the 21st century. This is a war on everyone. He is accurate, but in this war, can we be hypocritical as Democrats? I don't think we can anymore. We cannot be hypocritical because it backfires on us.
Yes, but that's the due north. Isn't that the due north of America, hypocrisy? I mean, that's part of the reason why I feel like we have a hard time making cases, because it's obvious, you know, that there are two playbooks. So
yes,
you know, how do we?
Karen, you know, you remember your first question, you know, and I said that after 9/11, we asked ourselves, how did we get here? About the Islamists and jihadists and Al-Qaeda to attack America, the heart of America. How did not we see that our allies, the Saudis, had 15 of the 19 hijackers, the Emiratis and others? So today we need to ask ourselves, how did we end with a fascist movement in America? The Republican Party is in thrall of a dictator, and it became an anti-democratic movement. In order to understand how did we get here, how did this Republican Party turn into be this rotten, basically pond of fascists? The only way to understand it, to understand that our foreign policy has contributed to this, whether it's in Iraq, in Palestine, our refusal to hold accountable people who committed war crimes, real war crimes. I mean, when I see people cheering this kid, 18 years old, who killed 2 people in Portland, I'm like, yeah, it was 1 week exactly after the Pentagon decided not to do anything about the military who killed Afghan children and civilians in a mistaken airstrike. So we need to understand that there's action and there's a reaction and there's consequences to our action.